Okay, this video is going to explain this incredible proof of ionospheric control of the jet stream over the Pacific Northwest of the United States. This picture is from April 27, 2016, and you can see 4 consistent holes in the clouds. And if we look later in the day, we see this. They actually stayed in place all day long, and I'm going to explain the significance of this. It's absolutely remarkable, and this is happening every single day. It's basically just a computer glitch at NOAA that we actually get to see it. So why is that ionospheric control program so incredibly important? This program is actually killing the entire planet by driving warm air from Asia into Alaska and northern Canada and the Arctic Circle. My polar vortex videos of the previous 2 winters have forced them to abandon that program where they had a, quote, ridiculously resilient ridge of high pressure out west of California, forcing warm air up into the Arctic where it would then plunge down into the central U.S., giving us the illusion of extremely cold and ice age coming and all that stuff. So to continue their program of melting the Arctic, they have shifted to a much more clever and covert method of using 2 regions of ionospheric heaters. And one, which we just saw in the intro, is that they have a blockage in the jet stream here. And this causes the warm air from Asia to actually split here, with maybe half of it going north into Alaska and then half of it coming down and towards California. The second part of the ionospheric heater program is you have cold air consistently coming down from the Bering Sea, crossing the Aleutian Islands where it runs over warmer water that forms a low pressure here. They have ionospheric heaters positioned in the Aleutian Islands here, which then modify and delocalize the low pressure, causing it to form a large counterclockwise circulation. So the combination of these 2 programs is what's melting the Arctic at this blistering pace. As the Arctic Sea melts, the shallow sediments are beginning to release millions of tons of methane, and methane has increased by 3% in the atmosphere over the last 3 years. And this is nearly a 1% increase in total greenhouse gas in only 3 years. So this man-made Arctic heating program is the tipping point that the scientists have warned us about. Arctic ice coverage is now the lowest in history for this time of year. And these 2 secret ionospheric heater operations are largely responsible for this rapidly melting Arctic. So let's have a look at how this is managed in detail. Here's April 27th, 2016 in GOES West Visible mode. And what we see, and this has been going on for months and months, basically ever since the polar vortex was shut down, there's a blockage in the jet stream here. And let's zoom in and see this. So here's Vancouver Island, Washington State, Oregon State. And we can see these quite amazing holes in this cloud deck that actually stayed in place all day without moving. And let's magnify this and have a look at the motion. Because what's happening here is you have extremely powerful microwave beams that can concentrate down to a pinpoint in the D layer of the ionosphere about 35 miles up, but only during the daytime. And the rapid heating causes a toroid plasma to descend rapidly into the top of the jet stream. And what we're seeing here is man-made high pressure, and they're pinpoints of man-made high pressure. So let's stop this and look at the evidence. As the sun rises, there's some activity, but as the D layer forms in the daylight, that's when they're able to actually make it work. So here's an hour and a half after sunrise. Now we see descending air. Now if we zoom in some more, we see these concentric rings and they expand just like the roll clouds from a collapsing thunderstorm. Same rate. They're just plain roll clouds. But those are the telltale sign that this is a downburst of high pressure. And here we can see some rings, 3 concentric rings focused on the void in the clouds. Similarly, here we see concentric rings. Kind of tough to see at this resolution. Now, why aren't the meteorologists talking about this? Because they have big workstations and the highest resolution available. So I call on you scientists to have a look at this. And down here, right at the corner of Oregon, we have another one. Let that play. Slow down, please. So, absolutely remarkable. Maybe a little faster. Now let's look at it, about 4 hours later. Sorry, video card has to catch up. So the holes in the clouds stayed in one position from sunup to sundown, and we'll see that in a minute. And I don't want to take too much time with this, so let's zoom in. And actually, as the sun sets, we get a very good view of the expanding roll clouds, which I've nicknamed the HAARP downburst. And stop. Let me find one to show you. Okay, well, what happens is that jet of air is pressed down into the top of the jet stream. It spreads out laterally as a smoke ring that's expanding sideways, and it will drag some of that warm, humid air over the top, where it then condenses, and that's what we see in the satellite map. Is we see that ring of condensed cloud on top of the roll cloud as it's moving out, and this moves at the same rate as a thunderstorm roll cloud. So hard to see the detail at this resolution, but we do see. So let me just let it play nice and slow. Okay, and another feature that's interesting is that this roll cloud here on the southwest side is stationary because this air mass is moving east at the same speed that the roll cloud is trying to move west. So it sits there stationary. But on the east side of the downburst, it's getting a boost, so it moves quicker. So maybe this one shows it a little better. But these are ionospheric heater operations that are being used to put, zoom too far. That are being used to place an obstruction in the jet stream. So here we have the sun setting, and we can make out a lot of expanding clouds, circular clouds, centered on these slots or openings. So I will slow this down and zoom in some more. And if anybody can explain how you can have this kind of thing, obviously there's expanding roll clouds and they were totally stationary. And I've looked at Vancouver Island. It is probably not the source of these ionospheric heaters, but you never know because they could be relatively small. But it does take a very large amount of power to generate the microwave beam. I imagine these are some Navy ships that are moored in one place. So, if we can stop and see, now this is the kind of thing, a big circular arc, and let's see if it moves. Yes, it does move. All of these features are expanding away from the central downburst point. And as the sun sets, there is a characteristic lack of any contrast. For instance, you can see here high cloud tops, nice and bright, as the rays of the sun are horizontal, only the high things are illuminated. And this is, it's either totally flat because of the downburst air, or so much of this is photoshopped and they don't have the software to, introduce the highlights. Same as this whole coast of California. This is all a ionospheric heater operation zone. And if we look up here, yes, we have highlights. We have highlights in the clouds. And of course, this is still in the sunlight, whereas this is dark over here. So what I've just shown you is excellent proof of why there is a consistent blockage in the jet stream here in the Pacific Northwest. We can see it just extremely well right here in water vapor mode for goes west on, I think this is April 27, the exact same time actually. So by placing this blockage here, the natural storm flow into the US and Canada is blocked. And you see this flow of warm air has to split, and half of it is driven into Alaska. But the other feature that's a requirement to keep this steady state and managed properly is these low pressures that come off the Aleutian Islands have to be managed. So what happens naturally is cold air from the Bering Sea spills south across the Aleutian Islands into warmer water, and the difference between the warm water and the very cold air causes low pressures to form right here. So as these low pressures form, they gain in strength very quickly, and they will build and become too much of an energy concentration to be managed. So a string of ionospheric heaters along these Aleutian Islands produces this characteristic, they're parallel roll clouds, and they're always parallel to the Aleutian Islands, and these will roll over the center of low pressure, basically smearing it out and distributing that rotation into a wider area. So here a couple of hours later we see this in action, and these are long parallel roll clouds which are actually steamrolling over this low pressure. And this shows up in many satellite maps as an anomaly that has been going on for several months. Okay, so this is a few days earlier, but it's consistently showing up on a very frequent basis. Let's zoom in and have a look at this. These are lines in the cloud tops. The green is minus 15 C and the yellow is minus 30 C. So this is a temperature profile of the cloud tops. And this is occurring very frequently on a daily basis. It happens in the middle of the night generally, and it's usually centered on these low pressure systems, which then disappear. So here's another example just quickly. You can see what it does to this low pressure. It gets more and more stretched out, and we do see the, I call them Alaska lines. There are, and that's the one we already saw. And just as more confirmation, these long parallel ionospheric heater roll clouds are visible in the satellite maps in the daytime. So now let's track some of these lows in fast time lapse and watch how they have an assembly line producing these low pressures off the Aleutian Islands. Then they are weakened, broadened out, and then held in the Gulf of Alaska as long as possible. Okay, starting April 24th, we can see they have a low pressure in the target zone. The Gulf of Alaska is where they want to hold these broad areas of low pressure. And we'll step ahead. You can see later in the day they're going to get rid of it because it's too weak. It's not driving the air into Alaska. So they go ahead and push this on through. Okay, sunset looks very weak. The next day we have a new low pressure. They pushed the old one out and it's completely gone, and now this new low pressure is building up too much strength, so it's getting the ionospheric heater operation done on it. Later in the day you can clearly see these long straight lines moving across it, and we'll watch how it weakens. Later in the day it's starting to become stretched out. So by sunset it is very much weakened and the rotation is pretty much stopped. Okay, sunset and sunrise, it's a very wide and broad circulation. So midday it's sitting there and they want to hold that position as long as possible. At sunset it's looking very weak, so they replace it again. By sunrise, amazingly, it's gone, and out at the tip of the island chain you have the next one forming, and this is literally an assembly line where they keep these coming and then position them in the Gulf of Alaska. Months on end this has been going on. You can see the new low pressure spinning vigorously. Big temperature difference between the cold air and the warm water on this side of the islands. And you notice our blockage is in place to the east, and a new low pressure is getting all stretched out here, so it will get the same treatment. Sunset. So sunrise, we can see it's spinning vigorously. Let's just zoom in here and crap. Now this is kind of important because, okay, sunrise, spinning nice, and look at all these storm clouds are symmetric here. So let's step forward. So midday on the 28th, it's still spinning vigorously, but it's for some reason looking lopsided. And as the sun sets, we see really an amazing sight. Okay, so something happening on this side of the storm that doesn't look natural. So let's look at sunset. Here's sunset, and as the setting rays of the sun illuminate the cloud tops, we can see it's not symmetrical anymore. Very odd. And you know, this cold air coming over the warm air here, this should be the stronger side of the storm. Instead they have it, you can see it's not symmetrical anymore, even though the visible shows us it should be symmetrical, but the setting sun shows us it's not. This is because you have this artificial man-made high pressure right here, and we'll see what it looks like in the morning. So when the sun rises, it has moved significantly and it's weakened a whole lot, and unfortunately this is the only picture I have of it because I was busy that day. But we can zoom in a little bit. Oops. But you can see it has moved a ton overnight and doesn't look all that strong anymore. So we'll jump now a whole day ahead. So a day later, our weakened low pressure down here has now moved all the way up into the target zone, and it's not really showing any circulation here, but this is what they wanted. Okay, I'm sorry, I do have that map from the 29th, and this is really important because at sunrise we see it's still a nice strong circulation, and if we zoom in we actually see the ionospheric roll clouds rolling over the top of it. So let's have a look. I don't want to make this video too long, but this is really important. Okay, so first we see some parallel lines here and a notch, a dry air notch right down the center. So, and I do have a full sequence on this low pressure. So we can see these parallel lines are the ones that are showing up in the satellite yellow-green map. And again, it's rolling right over the top to cut down this energy and create a broad area of circulation. So 5 hours later, it has moved. It's still very powerful. It's not tamed yet. So if we zoom in, we can see these parallel lines rolling over the top of it still in the daytime. Slow it down a little. So we're looking for these type of lines here, and even these, and watching them move to the southeast, like this line here. And it zips across. So 5 hours later, on the 29th, they are still at it, and now we can actually see this notch of dry air right next to the low pressure. And we'll stop it, zoom it. I mean, look at these parallel lines here, and they are moving. And since they have two ionospheric heaters, or multiples, they're able to do this during the nighttime because one of them can maintain the hot spot in the ionosphere, which is a huge tactical advantage because it keeps it off the visible satellite maps. So near sunset on the 29th, they keep up the operation, but they're not able to really knock it down very well because it's what it's doing is it's pulling in too much cold air from underneath. So they're continuing to try to get it under control. Sunset, it's still very energetic. Okay, 11 hours later at sunrise, and I'm not kidding, I have double checked these dates and everything. We can see it has completely stopped rotating. And zoom in here. Not only has it stopped rotating, but it's covered with these parallel lines. Zoom in some more. Look at this. That was the low pressure, and it is covered with these parallel lines. These are the HAARP roll clouds from. They just take that microwave hotspot and sweep it back and forth like a line printer. And the technology is now getting very advanced. And this thing is not rotating anymore at all. Let it play a little slower. So that was our low pressure. Evidently it was too much for them to handle. They didn't need it. It was going to bring a lot of rain to Canada or Alaska. Incidentally, Canada is in drought. Alaska is in drought. And of course, Southern California, vicious drought. Okay, we can actually see these long parallel lines moving to the southwest. And again, they're parallel to the coast here. All these lines emanate from ionospheric heater that's parallel, that's operating somehow. And I think it's just several big microwave, flat plate arrays, synthetic aperture radar, phased array, whatever you want to call it, like the US Navy SBX-1. So that is a stunner. Granted, it is running over cooler and cooler water, but for it to have gone from such a high energy state to absolutely no rotation the next morning, and again, this rotation that used to be here in the center is now distributed to the outside edge where they want it to be to drive the warm air. So this is about 4 hours later and midday, and the interesting thing is they have squashed the low pressure that used to be here, but that energy is still there, and it shows up here at the coast where it tries to spin up again. So the next morning, they're maintaining their flow, but this low pressure is trying to reorganize over here. But it has a very peculiar look with actually, perhaps here's a circulation, Let me zoom this a little bit. So here's a circulation, here's another circulation, and here appears to be a downdraft of warm air. Okay, I wanted to show you the current map, but this is what I get. Sometimes it takes me hours to download a single satellite image, and I think it's denial of service attack, or they're still editing the last image, but that doesn't really make sense. So we all know that the US Navy owns and operates the Pacific Northwest and the Alaska coast. So these programs are just evidence of that fact, and we know who's behind it. And I spent over a week making a PowerPoint slideshow to explain all of this, but by waiting my browser will probably crash and the proof will be lost. So I may put up the slideshow as a separate video. Unfortunately, because of this video, after about 4 business days, you will never see these kind of things on satellite again, even if NOAA has to manually edit the images. My hiatus of 4 months of no videos has apparently caused them to relax their standards and become careless. But my area is back in a deliberate drought, so here's another video for the world. And I am certain that the Navy officers are being told this operation is to keep the Fukushima radiation out of the U.S. Well, that is a lie. The real goal is to trigger the release of 50 billion tons of Arctic methane, which will turn the entire planet into a broiler oven in 10 years. We are all dead if this program continues. And thanks to my NSA handler for letting my browser stay up long enough to make this video. Very unusual. Usually they crash it when I download something really good. So who is the threat to national security? The commanders who are going to make it 140 degrees in the shade, or someone who wants to keep your grandkids alive and happy? Thanks for watching.